Hello, welcome again to Silver Creek Church. My name is Matthew Nichols. Got my eye on you. And we're here on chapter 15 of the book of Luke, studying yet again. And in chapter 15, it starts off with a parable. Jesus told a lot of stories. Parables are short stories, fictional stories, but they help make a good, solid teaching point. They help to relate, like a good analogy. They help relate things that are hard to understand with things we easily understand, and then suddenly it becomes more known to you. You're like, oh, that's revelation, epiphanies happen.
Oh, really?
So another parable is happening today, and in this one, Jesus is talking about a very infamous story. You've surely heard this thing before. Jesus would leave the 99 to save the one, or God would leave the 99 to save the one, if I try to hit my microphone here. The idea is that one person is just that important. That there is no law of numbers when it comes to God's kingdom, that every single person counts. Every single person is their own identity and has their own importance, no matter who you are, where you come from. And have you ever lied in bed at night and counted sheep? You ever wonder where that came from? It does not come from this. So let's get started reading, shall we? Tax collectors and sinners were all crowding around to listen to Jesus. So the Pharisees and the teachers of the law of Moses started grumbling. This man is friendly with sinners. He even eats with them. Then Jesus told them this story. If any of you has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will you do? Won't you leave the 99 in the field and go back for the lost sheep until you find it? And when you find it, you will be so glad that you will put it on your shoulder and carry it home. Then you will call in your friends and neighbors and say, "Let's celebrate. I've found my lost sheep." Jesus said, in the same way, there is more happiness in heaven because of one sinner who turns to God than over 99 good people who don't need to. Jesus told the people another story. What will a woman do if she has 10 silver coins and loses one of them? Won't she light a lamp, sweep the floor, and look carefully until she finds it? Then she will call in her friends and neighbors and say, "Let's celebrate. I've found the coin I lost." Jesus said, in the same way, God's angels are happy when even one person turns to him. All right, pause a second. If you're a parent, you can especially relate to this, because when you have a child of yours, especially a young child, who loses something, and it's really important to them because maybe it's something that you gave to them. Of course, to a lot of young kids, everything is special. Even, that little McDonald's toy thing that's worth 2 cents. They're like, but if they lose it, it's really important to them. And they cry and they're heartbroken. And as a parent, you're like, what do we do? Can we go buy another one to replace it? They don't notice. I don't know. But as a parent, your heart's broken for that child because you don't want them to hurt like that. Because that thing is so important to them. They're not going to stop until they find it. They're concerned. They're worried. And Jesus is telling the story here that God feels the same way about you and me and every single person who doesn't know God yet. He's pointing out that, look, when everybody's safe and everybody's okay, that's awesome, and we all love that. But doesn't it feel great when someone who wasn't safe, who wasn't okay, is suddenly made to be safe, like is found in this case? And we've all lost something. And we all know that feeling of elation that comes over us when we finally found it. That feeling of, I can just relax now. If you leave your purse somewhere especially, you're like, you might think worrying thoughts, but you can't rest until it's found. You got to find that thing. And that's how God's relentless pursuit is with each one of us. That's true love. Let's read on. Jesus also told them another story. Once a man had 2 sons. The younger son said to his father, "Give me my share of the property." So the father divided his property between his 2 sons. Not long after that, the younger son packed up everything he owned and left for a foreign country, where he wasted all his money in wild living. He had spent everything. When a bad famine spread through that whole land, soon he had nothing to eat. He went to work for a man in that country, and the man sent him out to take care of his pigs. He would have been glad to eat what the pigs were eating, but no one gave him a thing. Finally, he came to his senses and said, "My father's workers have plenty to eat, and here I am, starving to death. I will go to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against God in heaven and against you. I am no longer good enough to be called your son. Treat me like one of your workers.' The younger son got up and started back to his father. But when he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt sorry for him. He ran to his son and hugged and kissed him. The son said, 'Father, I have sinned against God in heaven and against you. I am no longer good enough to be called your son.' But his father said to the servants, 'Hurry and bring the best clothes and put them on him. Give him a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet. Get the best calf and prepare it so we can eat and celebrate. This son of mine was dead, but has now come back to life. He was lost and has now been found.' And they began to celebrate. The older son had been out in the field, but when he came near the house, he heard the music and dancing. So he called one of the servants over and asked, 'What's going on here?' The servant answered, 'Your brother has come home, safe and sound, and your father ordered us to kill the best calf.' The older brother got so angry that he would not even go into the house. His father came out and begged him to go in. But he said to his father, 'For years I have worked for you like a slave and have always obeyed you. But you have never even given me a little goat so that I could give a dinner for my friends. This other son of yours wasted your money on prostitutes, and now that he has come home, you ordered the best calf to be killed for a feast.' His father replied, 'My son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we should be glad and celebrate. Your brother was dead, but he is now alive. He was lost and has now been found.'" And so we have here the story of the prodigal son. And we've heard this story probably so many times. Whether you're a Jesus follower, a Christian, and have heard this throughout your church life, or if you're new to this, you probably have heard this before. You're like, "Oh yeah, the prodigal son, I've heard that before, that story." And this story is so familiar that it's easy for us to gloss over it when we're reading it. It's easy for us to completely miss key points. But there's so many key points within this passage, this story. First key point that I think of is the older brother. The older brother represents all of us who have been staying with the program, who have done it the way we thought we were supposed to. We followed the rules. We did everything the way we thought we were supposed to. We stayed within the lines, and here comes along this person who was late to the party, so to speak, or messed up and did a lot of things wrong, and things seem to go better for them. And you're sometimes going, why in the world is things going so good for them? I'm struggling over here. I'm clawing and scratching to survive, so to speak, or just to get along, and I don't ask for much. I'm cool with it. But geesh, it kind of irritates me a little bit to see that person get good things when I'm ready for my day. Where's my day? And there's those of us who, represented by the prodigal son, who, you know what, we started off and had a great life, and then we said, it looks like it's better over there. I think I want to see what it's like over there instead of right here. I mean, I've always been here, but what's it like? I just wonder. So, see ya. And we go there, and we find out it was not better. We maybe get hurt. We maybe hurt others. Sometimes these are where our greatest regrets in life are rooted and planted, and we really don't like to think about it very much, to be honest. But when Jesus welcomes us back, we're like, oh, thank you so much. We're so grateful, you know? And then there's the father's perspective. The father's perspective is, look, I love both my kids. I love them both the same. Can't they see that? My love is no different, but I give them their free will and I give them their free choice to choose. I'm not going to force them to do what's right. I'm going to let them choose. And sometimes they're going to choose the wrong choice. And it's going to hurt me. Trust me, it hurts me to watch them go through pain. When they shed a tear, I shed a tear. But when they come back, that's what I look forward to. Just please come back. Don't wait any longer. It's been long enough. Come on, come back. It's okay. I still love you. And so there's so many perspectives within this story. We can miss over it so easily. And the key here is to look at the other perspectives other than the one you feel like represents you. And we'll learn so much. Let's read on with chapter 16. Jesus said to his disciples, "A rich man once had a manager to take care of his business. But he was told that his manager was wasting money. So the rich man called him in and said, 'What is this I hear about you? Tell me what you have done. You are no longer going to work for me.' The manager said to himself, 'What shall I do now that my master is going to fire me? I can't dig ditches, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do. I know what I'll do so that people will welcome me into their homes after I've lost my job.' Then, one by one, he called in the people who were in debt to his master. He asked the first one, 'How much do you owe my master?' 100 barrels of olive oil,' the man answered. So the manager said, 'Take your bill and sit down and quickly write 50. The manager asked someone else who was in debt to his master, 'How much do you owe?' 1,000 bushels of wheat,' the man replied. The manager said, 'Take your bill and write 800. The master praised his dishonest manager for looking out for himself so well. That's how it is. The people of this world look out for themselves better than the people who belong to the light. Pause a second here. Okay, I know this story is hard to understand because you're like, hey, that guy's not doing the right thing by his boss. He's doing a horrible, dishonest thing to his boss. So why is Jesus telling this story? But Jesus told controversial stories sometimes because you're going to remember something controversial easier than something that's kind of boring and everyday, right? You're going to remember it more. And so this was kind of I can't believe he's saying this type thing to remember it better. And here's the point of the story. When you know that it's the time for you to go somewhere, whether it's, in this case, fired from a job, but let's talk about life and death. When you know that it's your time to go, like a doctor says to you, you've got 2 weeks to live. What you do with those last 2 weeks is probably going to be a whole lot different than what you would have done had you not gotten that news. And that's a fact. Everything in this physical world is on a countdown. Everything is deteriorating. Everything's going to be going away soon. I mean, you put something out in the sun and it's going to slowly wither away. A branch falls off a tree and it takes time, but it will decay. It will go away. Everything's on a countdown on the earth. Your money you have now, it's only temporary. You can't take the money with you into eternity. You could bury it in your coffin, but it's going to sit right there in the earth and no one else is going to touch it. It's just there. It's temporary. So he's trying to point out that wouldn't you do things different? Wouldn't you behave differently if you know that everything's coming down to a countdown? And as Jesus followers, as children of the light, in this case, we do know better. And so it's about priorities, prioritizing your life. My disciples, I tell you to use wicked wealth to make friends for yourselves. Then, when it is gone, you'll be welcomed into an eternal home. Anyone who can be trusted in little matters can also be trusted in important matters. But anyone who is dishonest in little matters will be dishonest in important matters. If you cannot be trusted with this wicked wealth, who will trust you with true wealth? And if you cannot be trusted with what belongs to someone else, who will give you something that will be your own? You cannot be the slave of two masters. You will like one more than the other, or be more loyal to one than to the other. You cannot serve God and money. The Pharisees really loved money. So when they heard what Jesus said, they made fun of him. But Jesus told them, "You are always making yourselves look good, but God sees what is in your heart. The things that most people think are important are worthless as far as God is concerned." Until the time of John the Baptist, people had to obey the law of Moses and the book of the prophets. But since God's kingdom has been preached, everyone is trying hard to get in. Heaven and earth will disappear before the smallest letter of the law does. It is a terrible sin for a man to divorce his wife and marry another woman. It is also a terrible sin for a man to marry a divorced woman. All right, this next parable we're about to go into, the last parable for today's reading, is called Lazarus and the Rich Man, which sounds like a cool album title. Maybe Huey Lewis and the News, Lazarus and the Rich Man. I don't know. If it works, send me some royalties. That was a good title. Anyway, this parable is written directly to the Pharisees. Remember, Jesus is in a conversation right now with the Pharisees. He's talking to the Pharisees, And Pharisees saw their life as one great big game of Operation. Remember that game, Operation?
It's Operation, the Wacky Doctor's game, where you're the wacky doctor. Batteries not included.
I blew it.
It takes a steady hand, because if you touch the side...
Yeah, in that game of Operation, you had to be careful not to touch the sides. If you touch the sides, oh, you lose. Well, what the Pharisees had in mind was, don't make a mistake, don't break a law, you lose. And so their goal, their objective in their life was to have the most perfect score they could. They wanted to achieve a perfect score, to have no demerits, to have no marks against them. They would write messages and paste them to their forehead, guys, to follow their eyes around all day long. They were serious about this. They went to great lengths, great measures, from the clothes they wore to the way they kept their household, to the rules they made to not be around certain people, to make sure they could keep a perfect score. They thought the point was to die with a perfect score, that was the point. And what Jesus is trying to tell them is that's not the point. You're missing the point. You read the rules of the game really well, and you really read them carefully, but you missed the intent of the game. You missed the heart of the game. And the heart of the law, the intent of the law, was to always do one thing, and that is to protect God's people from their own hurt, from harm that would come from doing things that God knew would harm them. To help us when we have our own free will, it's to help us keep our free will within a certain check so we don't wander off, get lost, and get hurt. Let's read on. There was once a rich man who wore expensive clothes and every day ate the best food. But a poor beggar named Lazarus was brought to the gate of the rich man's house. He was happy just to eat the scraps that fell from the rich man's table. His body was covered with sores, and dogs kept coming up to lick them. The poor man died, and angels took him to the place of honor next to Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried. He went to hell and was suffering terribly. When he looked up and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side, he said to Abraham, "Have pity on me. Send Lazarus to dip his finger in water and touch my tongue. I'm suffering terribly in this fire." Abraham answered, "My friend, remember that while you lived, you had everything good, and Lazarus had everything bad. Now he is happy, and you are in pain. And besides, there is a deep ditch between us, and no one from either side can cross over." But the rich man said, "Abraham, then please send Lazarus to my father's home. Let him warn my 5 brothers, so they won't come to this horrible place." Abraham answered, "Your brothers can read what Moses and the prophets wrote. They should pay attention to that." Then the rich man said, "No, that's not enough. If only someone from the dead would go to them, they would listen and turn to God." So Abraham said, "If they won't pay attention to Moses and the prophets, they won't listen even to someone who comes back from the dead." What Jesus is saying here is a little warning. 2 guys, one goes to heaven, one goes to hell. One had everything wonderful in this life, but had everything horrible in the next life. One had everything horrible in this life, but went on to splendor in the next life. But Jesus is pointing out that some people just won't listen no matter how many times God sends someone to try to help them. No matter how many times they watch a message that talks about this right here, right now. You have a choice right now. What are you going to choose? I hope you choose the right thing. The right thing is to love others, to love God more than you love yourself. I'll see you next time.